So we move on then to apologies, and we've received an apology from Councillor Bizet and from Councillor Thompson. Seconded Councillor Peach. Thank you very much. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. In terms of confirmation of the agenda, in discussion with the GSO, with Grace, the minutes under 4.3, there are a couple of inaccuracies in those and an omission which need to be rectified, and while we could do them by way of amendment now, my preference would be that we deal with them, reissue them, give everyone time to consider them, and then have them come back at the next meeting. So with the agreement of the meeting, I would move that we confirm the agenda with the removal of 4.3, so we'll still do 4.1 and 2, but deal with 3 at a later meeting. So I'll move that. Seconded Councillor Peat. Thank you very much. All those in favour, discussion. If not, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Declaration of interest is just for noting. So that brings us to the minutes of the Grants Subcommittee, and I'm happy to move as Chair for 1 and 2. Seconded Councillor Kate Wilson. I'm struggling with people's names today. Sorry, everybody. Great. Is there any discussion on those? If not, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Minutes of the Otago Settlers Museum Board. Do I have a mover for those? Thank you, Kate. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Noon. I'll put that. Discussion. If not, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Dr. Griffin, welcome. Thank you for your patience. Would you like to open with any comments? Yes, super.
Yes. Kia ora. It's a pleasure to be able to report to the council members. I'm not going to go through over too much detail the report. It's in front of you, and I'm more than happy to answer some questions. But I just want to reflect that strategically, some of the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years is now starting to pay off at the museum. I'm extraordinarily pleased that we've now doubled the size of the collections team. We've got 2 conservators now, going from a base of 0 2 years ago. While I would argue that 13 people working on the collections is an unlucky number, but it's also double what we had, and we're looking to increase the number of people looking after the taonga that we have at the museum. We've also, the board made a strategic decision to focus on science engagement, because firstly, it's a key thing that the young people of this region have the skills they need to be able to work in the modern world. But secondly, it's a way of potentially diversifying our income base, recognising that we don't want to just come to the council all the time for cash. So I'm really pleased that we've been successful in winning a couple of MBIE contracts that are focused on science engagement. And one of those contracts, the Participatory Science Platform, which is a partnership with the University, the Polytechnic, Ngāi Tahu and the Science Festival, is a national pilot which will give communities in Otago the opportunity to get funding for science activities. So I think that's a really great move for us, and I'm delighted that one of the 3 national pilots is here in Otago. Other than that, I'd just like to reflect on the fact that we're now, 4 months away from opening a planetarium at the museum, which we believe will be a significant facility not just for the museum but for the whole of Otago. It's the world's southernmost planetarium, I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear. We also hosted the museum's Aotearoa conference in May in partnership with the Art Gallery and Toitu, and that was very successful. We had over 230 professional colleagues from around the country came to Dunedin, and I think we're pretty much blown away by the subtropical weather we had in May, which was extraordinary. As I say, going forward, the big challenge for the museum is making sure that we open our new planetarium and our new gallery in December. We've got an opening date now of the 4th of December, and I'm sure members will be getting your invitations in the next few weeks. Other than that, the museum's on a good financial footing. We've just finished the financial year. We're going through our audit process in the next few weeks. I'm sure we'll get a clean bill of health. And I'm very much looking forward to the next year. I think there's lots of challenges, but potentially lots of excitement at the museum. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Dr. Griffin, thank you for your report. On page 6.9, the LOTC education, what does LEOTC stand for?
LEOTC is Learning Outside the Classroom. It's a grant that we get from the Department of Education to offset the running costs of the education work that we do. In that, you can see that we're running, I think it's about 194%, which means we're getting double the number of kids through that we are paid by the government to do. And that was a strategic decision we took a year or so ago. We used to manage it in such a way that we ended up going for about 100% or just over. Now we're really saying, okay, get as many kids through as we can. So I think that's a real positive result for us, because obviously the more young people that come through the museum, the more opportunity we have to kind of inspire them to take an interest in the world.
So you've gone out there and actively talked to the schools and...
Yes, we're becoming much more proactive. In an ideal world, we'd like to do a lot more outreach, going out to the schools, but we still have a relatively small education team. It's only about 3 people. So we have been working more with the schools, and we're getting more schools to come through the museum. But actually, one of the things that we're doing with this participatory science platform and a partnership with the university called Laboratory in a Box is to get more engagement activities out in the community, because we think that's very important. We are the Otago Museum, not the Dunedin Museum.
Yeah, perfect. That's an awesome result. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. A lot of highlights in your report. And just extending on the theme that Councillor Wiley's raised, the travelling laboratory that the museum and the University of Otago are launching soon. Can you describe kind of what that's going to offer?
Yes.
And it's travelling around the region, isn't it?
Yes, and I've got to say that that's a project that was championed by Professor Peter Dearden at the University of Otago, and the museum's a partner with that project. And it's called a laboratory in a box. And basically a container, a 40-foot container, yes, is presently being adapted by Otago Polytechnic to turn it into a thing that comes to your community and does magic stuff, not magic, sorry, science stuff. It kind of comes on the back of a lorry, is delivered to your community, and it sort of folds out a bit like Thunderbird 2, and all sorts of cool science goes on inside it. I think it's a fantastic facility for the whole of Otago and the South Island, and the museum's very excited to be a partner with that project. But it will take science, especially into the community, and we're very much looking forward to seeing where that goes.
Good. Yeah, thank you. Just one more. I know you'll have some ideas for a name for the planetarium, but planetarium sort of suggests our solar system. And I think, you're looking at Maori cosmology, you're looking at beyond our solar system, and we're in an exciting phase of discovery right now, as you know.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering whether you're open to ideas in terms of outer space and other ideas for the naming, which might be more exciting for...
Yes. I want to emphasise actually that while we call it a planetarium, that's just a conventional name for what we're doing in there, and we intend to be running shows on many different subjects, including flights through the human body and under the oceans. And I should also say that if anybody's interested in coming along to the museum, we're actually constructing the planetarium itself at the moment, but we also have a little test dome that we've built where we can sort of see our programming and how it's progressing. So if anybody around the table wants to come to the museum in the next few weeks, let me know and we'll show you some of the cool things that we're doing. But absolutely, Councillor, yes, we are thinking about what we call the planetarium, because obviously planetarium is a word that not everybody understands, and there's a bit of confusion. Even now people say, oh, you're putting a telescope on the roof, and actually that's not what we're doing at all. We're creating this amazing room where we can take you on journeys. So we'll certainly take that into consideration.
Thanks, Ian.
Just one question. This is a lovely report and it's very uplifting, I think. I'm wondering whether there's anything that you think the council could do that it isn't doing that would be helpful to you. I mean, apart from that, we're certainly not going to provide you with a good reference to go anywhere where, I mean, you're quite clearly useless for anybody else's point of view because we want you here. But short of a good reference, is there anything we could help you out with on council that we're not doing? Are you happy with everything that...
In general, yes. I mean, obviously there are some challenges that we have to get through over the next year or two, and specifically the potential impact of the cycleway on the museum is something that we've got to try and mitigate, and I know everybody around this table knows that that's an issue the museum needs to deal with. But other than that, I've got to say the council have been incredibly supportive, and I feel very much that, you know, if we're doing anything good, it's because of the investment that we get from the ratepayers of the city, but also the support that we get from everybody around this table. I know everybody here has been into the museum, and I feel that we do have your support, and we really do welcome that.
Councillor Vandevers.
Regarding the use of the word planetarium, I understand that some people will be confused and think it's going to be some kind of telescope setup, but a better word is going to be very hard to find, and the idea that it only relates to our solar system is a bit misleading anyway, since there are planets spread throughout the universe, which I think would get over Councillor Pete's issue. If it is in fact a planetarium, I think that is the word that you should use, because although there may be some confusion over it, there's going to be even more if you use any other word.
Yes, and it is a challenge actually what we call it, but certainly we're going to work very hard to make sure that whatever we do call it has meaning to the people who come through the door. That's really important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Griffin. We hear a lot about STEM subjects everywhere, all the time. So it's heartening to see STEAM mentioned in this report with regard to the Science Club. Just wondered if you wanted to talk a bit about that approach and contextualise that a little bit.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, obviously people know that I'm an astronomer and my background is mostly in science engagement. But we're very serious at the museum that actually we're about engaging everybody, no matter whether they're science or humanities. And this new term called STEAM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts and Mathematics, is very much the way that many museums, especially in the United States, are starting to think about this. So we are starting a STEAM club at the museum where the aim is not just to kind of focus on kids who love science, but it's actually to try and, no matter what your interests are, to try and cater for those interests and inspire you in different ways. And actually it's a really helpful way of thinking. And often, as I say, a few people have said to me in the last few weeks, oh, you're getting all this money for science engagement, is that all the museum does? And actually it's not. I mean, if you look at our exhibitions at the moment, for example, we've got the fantastic Intersections exhibition that Hotary's Ceramics. We just opened last week an exhibition on H.D. Skinner's service at Chanock Bear, which is incredible if you haven't seen that. It's a little tiny thing. It's not quite on the scale of Te Papa's magnificent exhibition, but in its own way it explains how one man changed at this battle, and it's extraordinary. I mean, Skinner wrote these incredibly moving letters that we just put online of his service and the impact that that battle had on him as a person. So that's a roundabout way of saying actually that exhibition in its own way inspires people to take an interest in history, and that's part of the arts in the STEAM agenda.
Yeah, if I may, and I'm completely supportive of that. I wonder if there is any, I mean, what response to that approach have you had, if any, from MB with regards to particularly the Unlocking Curious Minds funding to broadening it out?
Well, in that specific example, MBE are really, that's coming from the Office of the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor, and the focus there is really to get more young people in this country to take an interest in science. And I think if we were to try and expand into the arts for that particular grant, I'm not sure it would work very well in terms of the funding was for a specific purpose. But having said that, I think we can make the same argument to any of the other ministries, and they can see the value of working with museums. And I think that's one of the things that we can take some pride in here in Otago, is we've actually put museums are on the sort of the learning agenda, and until fairly recently, museums were just locked into this cultural piece, and now MB are seeing that actually we can deliver learning experiences that are of value, that do inspire people to take an interest in science, and that's in the long-term benefit of the country. Now, I think you can make the same argument to the Ministry of Education, and you can make the same argument to other ministries, but I think it's a pretty hard sell to MB to try and get them to fund arts engagement. I think that's not really core.
And just lastly, do you have any comments on the function particularly of design with regards to science and science communication, the relevance and importance of that discipline in the broader...
Yeah. We've been very lucky at the museum, and I think it's fair to say nearly all of our design team came from the Polytechnic Design School there. But good design is critical to being able to communicate. Again, I'm very proud of the fact. In fact, today we learned that our Intersections exhibition has just been nominated as a finalist in the Best Awards, and that exhibition is all about design. And so it's critical for everything we do in terms of the public-facing side of the museum. The design of the exhibits or the programs is critical to them being successful or not being successful. So it's a fundamental part of what we have to do. And having a really talented design team is a key part of that.
Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, I do have one. Ian, and it's around unlocking curious minds and the participatory science stuff. Fantastic in terms of museum success and getting that funding. What indication has there been from MB about the relative ongoing nature of that? Like, are you going to have to go through the same process again next year? Is there going to be a fund next year? Is this an ongoing program that they are committed to, or does it have a finite life?
Well, I think that decision is yet to be made, but the fact is that the idea of the 3 pilots is if they're successful, it might be rolled out on a national basis. And I would hope that if we're one of the pilots, we'd be in a fairly strong position to be considered for the final thing. But obviously that's an MB decision, and while I can try and influence it, it's above my pay grade.
Yeah, okay. You happy to move? Well, I was going to move and just add a second one, if I could, congratulating the museum on their success with the MB funding bids, because I think it is really significant both for the museum and for the city, putting us on the map in that regard, and very exciting for science in Dunedin. So I'm moved, seconded Councillor Wilson. Any discussion on that? If not, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? It's carried. Thank you, and thank you for joining us, Dr. Griffin. So that brings us to number 7, which is notification of agenda items, and I think, Lemia, I'll take your issue about Arawana and access as a matter of notification. Are there any additional, Councillor Benson-Pope?
In relation to the other item about St Clair, what is it you're proposing to do? Because I'd like that to include an element that I want to explain briefly, if I might. Sure.
I think, is Mr Saunders gone? So my understanding from Mr Saunders, and this was from a couple of weeks ago, so I haven't had an update in the last 24 hours, but my understanding was that they were working with Transport, that they were going to be bringing forward a report on the situation and the various different options, that they had received some independent advice about that.
Well, can I just ask for one dimension to be reported on, please? Mm-hmm. And really this is triggered by my observation that recently that the steps at the St Clair seawall contain a wee plaque with an ORC asset number on them, which I've asked the reason for, given I thought we paid for it. But I really want to explore the report to explore the relationship between this authority and the regional council, because it's clear that work of some kind is needed. We know that sea level is rising, and there was a very comprehensive report which I'm looking at, published by the ORC in 2012, called Community Vulnerability to Elevated Sea Level and Combined Tsunami Events in Otago. And in that report there is a definition of mean high water springs, I'm getting there, which is the upper boundary of the coastal marine area. Now, I think I'm being logical in thinking that if the upper boundary of the coastal marine area, which the ORC refers to as sort of close to the high water mark, is what's doing the damage, and it's halfway up the wall, in the case of the built wall at St Clair, then it's part of the coastal marine area, and the ORC has a responsibility. Similarly, if the damage that we've seen on the slides is being done by wave action at high tide, then I'd like an explanation of why the ORC isn't sitting at the table. I'm not trying to avoid the issue, but I think it's got to be a joint issue by both authorities, and I'd like that relationship explored, especially given what I've found in their own definition of what Mean High Water Springs means.
I will take that back to staff
Thank you.
and we will ensure that it's covered in the report. Thank you. Any further items? If not, I will move that we exclude the public for reasons outlined on the order paper. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Peat. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? That's carried.